The Steam Deck is home to many action-adventure games, no matter if you love games with intense combat or games that blend action, puzzle, and a rich story all together. I believe there will be something that will spark your interest. So today I will share 20 action-adventure games to play on the Steam Deck in 2025. Let's check it out. Now let's start out with Quantum Break. Quantum Break is a third-person action-adventure shooter where you get to not only shoot hordes of enemies, but where each type has different behaviors where you have to learn and adapt. And what's cool about Quantum Break is that I really love how you get access to time powers. And time powers are basically powers where you get to manipulate time to either accomplish different tasks or take down different enemies. Two of my favorite time power gameplay mechanics is Time Stop as well as Time Echoes. In Time Stop, you get to freeze different enemies in time where they get locked in a bubble and you get to shoot at them with no mercy and disrespectfully and kill them. And where Time Echoes, you get to replay certain instances in the events of the game where you either, number one, need to solve the puzzle in order to progress in the game because currently there are obstacles that block your way, or number two, you will also be able to use Time Echoes where you basically be able to learn about past events of the story of Quantum Break. And also another thing about this game too is that there is story junctions. There are plenty of different junctions that basically affect the plot of the game. There are multiple endings as well. So yeah, if you're looking for a third-person action-adventure shooter where there are a whole bunch of different enemies to fight, as well as there is also a story where you can experience multiple endings, if you love all that, definitely check out Quantum Break on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Death's Store. In Death's Store, you get to play as a small crow where you are basically working as a contractor, aka a reaper of souls for Reaping Commissions HQ. In this game, you get to explore various areas, which each area is adjacent to Reaping Commissions HQ via a door. And your goal is basically to collect 3 giant souls and unlock, you know it, the Death's Door. As you go about exploring, you'll deal with various enemies where each kind has really unique abilities and where you also get to use various weapons. And more importantly, there are also really interesting bosses that you get to encounter. Some are actual, organisms like living creatures, while there are other bosses that are object-like imagined organisms. So yeah, if you're looking for a chill, relaxing action-adventure game where you can easily pick up and drop whenever, definitely check out Death's Store on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Onimusha Warlords. Onimusha Warlords is a classic action-adventure game with plenty of enemies to fight, with unexpected plot twists, as well as different puzzles that sometimes could be easy, but sometimes could be a bit challenging in order to solve and progress in the game. Now, as far as Onimusha Warlords goes, it is really Japanese vibe-centric, in which you start with a katana sword, and as you progress, you get to gain more weapons to use, each having different elemental powers, as well as also possess magical attacks. So yeah, if you are looking for a Japanese vibed ancient game where you get to fight hordes of different enemies, as well as there is an interesting story for you to engage with, definitely check out Onimusha Warlords on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Watch Dogs 2. In this game, you get to play as Marcus, a young hacker who takes down shady and corrupt organizations throughout parts of a fictionalized Bay Area in California. This game specifically features iconic locations like San Francisco, Oakland, Marin County, and the Silicon Valley. You can travel by foot, travel by car, travel by buses, travel by trucks, motorbikes, you name it, as well as you get to engage in firearm fights also while driving. What I really love about Watch Dogs 2 is that there are various ways to approach those different missions, whether you want to approach it aggressively or in stealth mode. They both bring a really thrilling experience. As far as the aggressive approach goes, you get to engage in combat itself using a variety of melee and firearm weapons created from a 3D printer. As far as the stealth approach goes, you also get to use a variety of with things such as paralyzing enemies with your taser or secretly using drones. Now, as far as the game goes, since it is an open world game, aside from the main missions and side missions, there are also a variety of things to do in this vast fictionalized Bay Area where you can street race, you can engage in street art activities, drone racing, and many, many more. So yeah, if you are looking for an open world game that's really engaging, really fun, as well as you really love the vibes of the Bay Area like me who grew up in the Bay Area, it kind of hits home to me a lot, then definitely check out Watch Dogs 2 on the Steam Deck. And just as a side note, Watch Dogs 2, it is listed as unsupported because the multiplayer side of things doesn't work. So just as a side note, but as far as the game goes, it all runs properly. So yeah, if all this sounds interesting to you, definitely check out Watch Dogs 2 on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Just Cause 3. Just Cause 3 is a third-person action-adventure game where you get to play as Rico Rodriguez, who returns to his homeland, and unfortunately his homeland is now under control in dictatorship. And so you, as Rico, you must go on this mission to overthrow the dictator. It is a really fun, chaotic game where there are amazing exploring mechanics such as the tethering mechanics, as well as utilizing the variety of weapons such as rifles, missile launchers, aircrafts, ships, cars, and many more. It's a really fun, chaotic, action-packed adventure where the possibilities are just endless. So yeah, if you really love these type of action-packed games where there is a beautiful world to explore and where you can blow up stuff, you can also fight in various different ways that are just so remarkable, definitely check out Just Cause 3 on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Judgement. In this game, you get to play as Takayuki Yagami, a former lawyer and current detective who is trying to solve the case of a series of murder incidences in Kamurocho, a fictional Tokyo district. There are really cool, interesting, engaging plot twists, various side stories which keep me on my toes, as well as there are really interesting and fun encounters with gangs that I can beat up while roaming around, similar to the various Yakuza games. What's unique about Judgement, however, is the fact about mortal wounds. The thing about mortal wounds, they occur when you get hit by those various enemies where they do various damages to Yagami, your character, and where if you get those mortal wounds, it will permanently decrease your maximum health, in which in order for you to recover your fullest potential of maximum health, you must do two different options. One, either find a treatment from an underground doctor, or two, buy medical kits to use in order to restore your maximum health. So that is a gameplay element that I really like, that in which it is really unique. It just brings about this kind of strategy. It brings about this kind of thing in which you gotta be careful about not getting damaged by those tough enemies. It is something that's just really, really important to note. So yeah, if you are a person like me who loves a really engaging thriller story, as well as you love games where the story, the characters, and all that speak to you in many different ways, as well as you really love these games where there are a unique type of gameplay style where there is extra spice to it, definitely check out Judgement on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Bramble the Mountain King. In Bramble the Mountain King, you play as Ollie, who discovers that his sister is missing at night due to his sister wandering out into the woods and not coming back. So you, as Ollie, being a great brother, you decide to embark on this journey to hopefully find your sister and at the same time bring her safely back home. Now, as you journey out into the woods by yourself, you manage to find your sister. However, as you and your sister is on the way back home, your sister gets captured once again by a ferocious, mysterious creature, and so you as Ollie cannot go home just yet, but have to go find your sister and save her from the creature before it is too late. What I really love about Bramble is how there is an awesome narrator. As you progress in the game, there are times where the narrator will just say a interesting dialogue where it sounds as if it is somebody like your mom who is reading a bedtime story to you who is a little kid. It just kind of has this type of aesthetics, and I just feel like that is just really artistic, and where it is just something that is just often overlooked and also really nice. As well as what I really love about Bramble is how, as you go about where you have to go into those different houses to solve these different puzzles, there are also interesting booklets, these optional interesting booklets that you can read where you learn about those different enemies in the game, their backstory, and that is something that I also feel like it brings about this extra spice because it teaches me that potentially hurt people, that even though there were those enemies that are trying to harm Ollie, but at the same time, I can sympathize with them, their behavior of why they want to hurt Ollie because they themselves have been hurt in the past. But another thing that I have to really warn you about Bramble is that when you start out the game, it may seem as just a fun, jolly adventure game, but as you go farther into the game, I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but I have to warn you is that it starts getting very dark and very horrific. So that is something to really note for if you are somebody who is very sensitive to horror games, then Bramble may not be for you. You might get nightmares, just as a heads up, because it could be pretty scary later on in the game. In the beginning, not so much, but later on it will be more scary, so you might have to avoid that. But if you are somebody who doesn't mind horror games like I do, definitely check out Bramble the Mountain King because there is so much to the game and where it speaks to me in many different ways. Another thing that I have to also warn you is that Bramble could be frustrating because in Bramble the Mountain King, there is no health bar. If you get hit by an enemy, you're dead. If you land in some spikes, you're dead. There is no grace as far as being hit, so that is something to really also keep in mind that it is not easy. But anyways, if those things don't bother you, if you really love these type of games where there is a very big sense of emotion tied behind it, as well as where a game that it can speak to you in many different ways, as well as if you love these type of games where there's a beautiful soundtrack and a beautiful presentation, definitely check out Bramble the Mountain King on the Steam Deck. Now up next is the Saboteur. The Saboteur in this game, you play as Sean Delvin, who moved to France as a way to move on from his life as an outlaw. Since France at the time of the game, the game takes place in World War II, it is currently occupied by German Nazis. So you, as Sean, you decide to find purpose by fighting for France and joining the French resistance in order to fight and kick the Nazis back and make France become free. What I really love about the Saboteur is that it perfectly blends driving, shooting, melee combat, exploration, mashing that all together. I mean, you could be just driving in the countryside for 1 minute and then a few minutes later you are suddenly in the city engaging in massive shootouts. Man, it's just something that just brings about all these varieties, all these things going on, and all this craziness and chaoticness, all these different things just all blending in together. But what I really want to praise the Saboteur is that I love how there is this amazing thing about their illustrations. For areas that are occupied by the Germans, it would be black and white, which signifies, doom and gloom in France. When you continue and progress in the game, you will liberate various areas. Those liberated areas will have their color aesthetics restored, basically just showing that that part is becoming peaceful and the civilians living in that area of France will be safe and secure. It's just really cool to see how there is just this type of illustration that brings about this vibe of what's going on in the game. But anyways, if you really love historical fiction type of games where there's a whole bunch of action in it, definitely check out Saboteur on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Lost Judgement. Lost Judgement, in this game you play as Takayuki Yagami, an ex-lawyer who is now a detective and who has to investigate a bully/suicide case that is primarily based in a high school. Now what I love about Lost Judgement is that there are plenty of unexpected plot twists as well as a very thrilling adventure that you get to embark in. I also love where you get to go around those Japanese streets while beating up various thugs, as well as what I also love is that there are plenty of side things to do, most notably the side quests as well as school stories. In Lost Judgement, when you embark on those different side quests, there are many, not all the side quests, but many of the side quests, they will not open up unless you access an app on your phone where you navigate and track down something before the side quest is being able to access. So that is something that I find is really cool because it really shows the life of how a detective ought to operate right? A detective a lot of times has to find different cues in order to solve different mysteries. Now, the side quests, they also have different stories that are really touching. It just brings a lot of different valuable lessons that really teach me in different ways and speaks to me in different ways, as well as I also love going in with the school stories, because Yagami, in case you don't know, he is somebody that is about 40 years old, and as those different high school kids, it may be hard for him to relate to the high school kids because people in the Gen X generation and the Gen Zs, they are much different as far as technology goes, as far as lifestyle goes. So what I really love about this game with Yagami, as far as the school story goes, is that he really am submerging his life to understand the people that are younger, the younger people, also teaching him different ways of living, and him also motivating the kids to also become a better person, to mature better in life, because he has obviously been living life much longer than them. So that is something that I also find really precious in the school stories, is that I'm somebody who may be in their early 30s, but at the same time I can learn from people that are much younger, but I also can be somebody who learn from people that are much older. There are always these type of value that various generations bring. One thing I don't like about Lost Judgment is that they took away some features from the previous game Judgment. I mean, one notable thing that I loved about Judgment was where there is this health bar where if Yagami gets wounded to a certain point, it will deplete his maximum health and he needs to go find a cure by an underground doctor, or just heal it by finding specific aid kits and stuff. I won't give you any spoilers. All I'm gonna say is that is something that I really loved in the first game, and I am just really disappointed that it didn't include that in the second game. But anyways, if you are somebody who loves those Yakuza games and you love going around fighting up these different thugs, you like these type of action type of games, as well as you love games that speak to you in many different ways, definitely check out Lost Judgment on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition. In this game, you get to play as Wei Shen, who is an undercover cop who is on the mission to infiltrate the strongest triad in Hong Kong. What I love about Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition is that there are plenty of things to do. You can just drive around town, engage on various missions, whether it is the triad missions, whether it is the cop missions, whether it is just regular civilian side missions. There's just so many different variety of missions that you can do throughout the streets of Hong Kong. And what I also really love about Sleeping Dogs is that how, even though it has the vibes and aesthetics, in my opinion, kind of like GTA games, that's just my personal opinion, but what I really love about Sleeping Dogs is that it is more lenient towards melee combat instead of firearms combat, which to me is just really cool. Another thing that I also love about Sleeping Dogs is that it also has this Asian vibe. As somebody who is Asian, I kind of like that because it kind of just relates to me, even though I am not an undercover cop. But it's just cool to see games where when there are those dialogues where people speak in Chinese. It's just really cool to see that from time to time. But don't worry, even if you don't know how to understand Chinese, like if you don't know the language, you can still be able to play it, because as far as the game goes, the main story as well as the side quests and all that, most of it still has English in it, and whenever the characters speak in Chinese, there always will be English subtitles down there. So don't need to worry, even though some of the dialogue is in Chinese, but you will still be able to understand what's going on in the Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition. But anyways, if you really love, cop games, you love open world action games where there's a lot of things to do and where you can just go around and treat the city as if it is your city, definitely check out Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition on the Steam Deck. So number 10 is ReCore Definitive Edition. ReCore Definitive Edition is an action game where you get to play as Jolly Adams, one of the last humans living on a planet called Far Eden, which is occupied by robotic foes. Along with you also have some companions, which are Corebots, aka robot machines, who will help assist you on various missions, which involve fighting various enemies as well as solving various puzzles. What's cool about combat is that the enemies enemies all have these color codes which resemble their weaknesses to a matching color code of ammunition. For instance, if an enemy has a red code, you should use a firearm with a red code, as well as, if possible, use a core bot with a same colored core to take down the enemy effectively, as the color code basically resembles the specific color code for the weakness of the enemy, where if you use the specific matching color, it will really damage the enemies greatly. Now, I'm not saying that you use a different color, you will not be able to kill the enemies, but it will just be a lot harder. The color code just gives out the intel for the weakness of the specific enemy, the specific color code weakness for the specific enemy. Anyways, if you love, action games with chaotic fights, combating various enemies in an unknown futuristic world, definitely check out ReCore on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. It is an action ninja game which takes place around the 1500s in ancient Japan, where during that time there is a constant life and death conflict. In this game, there are tons of merciless enemies to fight in an unforgiving world with really tough, engaging bosses. In this game, you play as a disgraced and disfigured shinobi, aka a ninja, who must go on a mission to save his lord who got captured and basically restore his honor. So yeah, this is a game that is really hard and where it is also really punishing, so I would not recommend if it is for somebody who is not that great at gaming or is a beginner in gaming. But if you are somebody who loves games that are challenging, as well as if you love games that blend stealth and face-to-face combat with deadly tools and where you can fight like a savage ninja, then definitely check out Sekiro Shadows Die Twice on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Nier Automata. Nier Automata, in this game you get to play as androids, which are mechanical artificial humans who must fight to protect their land. What I really love about Nier Automata is that there is a beautiful world in which you can go around and face various enemies, and it has a really amazing story that backs with it, in which I am really attached to. There are also tons of side quests in which I find they are totally worth it as well. Some of them bring about all these different touching moments in which the characters make me, grow various tears, like tears that go into a waterfall. It is something in which it can be really touching, really amazing as well. So yeah, if you love futuristic games where there is a nice world to explore and where the world itself is not too big, and you love these games where there's a whole bunch of enemies to fight and a great story to back it up, definitely check out Nier Automata on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Shadow of the Tomb Raider. In this game, you get to play as the iconic Lara Croft. As you navigate areas flooded with danger, you will encounter, tombs, which may be pretty scary, as well as go through underwater worlds and doing all it takes to save the world from an apocalypse and become the Tomb Raider. In this game, you can hunt various animals in the wilderness, gather various resources to craft various items, as well as solve various puzzles and complete various side quests. It is a really fun action-adventure game where you are on your feet, not knowing what will happen next. So yeah, if all this sounds interesting to you, definitely check out Shadow of the Tomb Raider on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is a 3D platformer shooter adventure game where you get to fight hordes of enemies with a weapon wheel, where you have access to a whole bunch of different guns, different type of ammo and whatnot, as well as you also get to go around the different worlds to collect those various bots, and you get to also explore in this cartoon-like world where there's also two different types of dimensions. What I really love about Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is also how there are amazing bosses that are really interesting to engage and fight with, as well as there are also puzzles where you get to solve that keeps your brain working to try to figure out how to progress in the game, as well as also these different side quests that are also very quirky and fun. Now for me, I really love Ratchet & Clank. I was somebody who grew up with the franchise, and although I love the older Ratchet & Clank games better, but I believe that Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is still a great game to enjoy and dive into the world of imagination. So yeah, if you really really love Ratchet and Clank games, as well as you also love these games where there is a blending of, third-person shooter, as well as platforming and adventure and action and whatnot. If you love these games that have a mixture that it just blends in very well with these separate genres, definitely check out Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Alan Wake. In this game, you get to play as Alan Wake, a famous horror author who goes on a vacation with his wife to the Pacific Northwest. Now, little did he know that right when him and his wife settled in their vacation cabin out in nature, his wife mysteriously disappears, and the events from the story he supposedly wrote but forgotten unfortunately came back to life, causing massive destruction and corrupting those around him. So you, as Alan Wake, you must go on this journey to put an end to the horror as well as save your wife. What I love about Alan Wake is that there are plenty of unexpected ambushes as you journey out, as well as there are also those intense fights where you will have to utilize your flashlights, lanterns, and anything that has light to stun the enemies before shooting them down. So yeah, it is a game in which it is just really fun, really cool, as well as also at times it could be a bit nerve-wracking, especially when the enemies come at you unexpectedly and where you run out of resources. So it is something in which you will also have to really pay attention to stock up on your resources. Make sure that you have enough resources in order to continue on with the adventure. It is really, really important. As well as while progressing in the story, there will be also some environmental hazards that will come at your way, such as, barrels or objects just flying towards you that can deal damage to you if you are not careful. So that's something that you also need to be aware and avoid, as well as there are also these unexpected things that happen that could also turn against you and that become your enemy as well. So that is something to also keep in mind as well. It is a game that is just really thrilling, really exciting, and also a game full of unexpected things that can happen. So yeah, if you really love action thriller games where it is also has the elements of survival and horror elements to it, then definitely check out Alan Wake on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition. Devil May Cry 4 is a really fun, chaotic action game where you get to fight hordes of enemies coming at you in styles. It is just really fun, really chaotic and whatnot. As well as what I love about Devil May Cry 4 is that the game is divided into various missions in which each mission will be graded. And the grading is based on, how much items that you use throughout the various missions. For example, whether or not you use items to restore some of your health during an intense fight, as well as whether or not you use different items to revive you, just as a few examples, as well as, each mission can be graded based on also how many red orbs you collect, because while you go around in the game, you can bust down different items in the game, treat the world as if it is your world, and that will help you to get some red orbs, as well as when you kill different enemies, you also can accumulate these red orbs. So basically, you want to try to get as many red orbs collected, and that will guarantee you a higher grade on the mission. As well as another way that the mission can be graded is also the time that you take to complete the specific mission. If you finish the mission sooner, you will be awarded with a higher grade. Now, what I also really love about Devil May Cry is that while fighting those different enemies, there is a grade on the side showing a specific letter, and where there is a tagline depending on how well you fight. For instance, a grade A in Devil May Cry 4 is taglined Atomic. That's just an example. And I will say this, Devil May Cry 4, it may not be my favorite Devil May Cry game. My favorite Devil May Cry game is Devil May Cry 3, but unfortunately, Devil May Cry HD Collection, which includes Devil May Cry 1, 2, and 3, that HD collection does not run well on the Steam Deck. It is really bad. The audio is bad. The audio is messed up. So I feel really dishonored to recommend Devil May Cry 3 since it does not really run well. It works, and I was able to finish the game, but as far as the experience goes, it does not work well, so I could not recommend Devil May Cry 3, unfortunately, even though I love Devil May Cry 3 much more than Devil May Cry 4. But anyways, if you love these type of action games where there are a whole bunch of enemies coming at you and where you can fight in a hack and slash style, definitely check out Devil May Cry 4 on the Steam Deck. Now up next is Ryse, Son of Rome. In this game, you play as Marius Titus, who is a person who just got trained to become a Roman soldier, and where in between him finishing his training and him getting deployed to Alexandria, he pays his family a visit, but unfortunately in the process of the visit, barbarians invade the streets and unfortunately kills his family, his mom, his dad, as well as unfortunately his sister. So you as Marius decides to go on this mission to go fight to avenge your family. What I really love about Ryse, Son of Rome is how there are a lot of enemies to fight in hack and slash fashion, where you just go in and chaotically engage in the enemy fights and whatnot. What I also love about this game is how brutal the game is, where you get to engage in execution sequences, as well as you get to use various weapons, either the weapon own as well as the weapons in the environment from time to time, to engage in different fights to your advantage. There's just something about this game in which, as I go about as Marius Titus fighting off those different enemies, it feels not repetitive, unlike some hack and slash games. In this game, as I go about fighting, it really feels like as if I am just going in there because of how much I hate those enemies killing my family. It's just something that I feel just really special compared to other hack and slash games, where some of them just feels very repetitive, but this one just feels very emotional in my opinion. So yeah. And then on top of Ryse, Son of Rome, the campaign, there's also gladiator mode, where you can play either by yourself or with one friend, where you get to fight off various waves of enemies and whatnot. And that is something that I feel, even though that is not the major seller point for Ryse, Son of Rome, the major seller point for Ryse, Son of Rome is obviously the campaign in my opinion, but I am really glad that they included gladiator mode, because sometimes I might want to play some games with some friends where I can easily pick up and drop, and this, I believe, is one of those things that I can play with a friend cooperatively and where I can easily pick it up and drop whenever. But anyways, if you are somebody who loves hack and slash games, and you also love these games where there is an emotional story to it and where you really feel for the character, definitely check out Ryse, Son of Rome on the Steam Deck. Now up next is God of War 2018. God of War 2018 is a fun, action-packed adventure game with an amazing story where you play as Kratos, the iconic God of War franchise figure whose wife Faye passes away, leaving just him and his son Atreus as part of the family. Now, to give one last honor to his wife Faye, Kratos and Atreus goes about on a journey to the highest point of the 9 realms based on Norse mythology to spread the ashes of Faye. Throughout the journey, there are plenty of moments where Kratos taught Atreus how to grow and mature into a man both physically and mentally, such as helping him learn how to hunt as well as learn to control his anger, and those moments are extremely impactful. As for the action side of things, there are plenty of enemies to fight using various weapons such as the Leviathan Axe and later the Blades of Chaos, each having their own strengths and weaknesses. It is just so immersive and so engaging and so fun, as well as so touching. But what I also love about God of War 2018 is that it also incorporates those RPG elements where you get to tinker your gear as well as learn new skills in fighting. So yeah, if you really love these action-packed games with an impactful story and a beautiful world where you get to get immersed in, definitely check out God of War 2018 on your Steam Deck. Alright guys, my favorite action-adventure game, and that is none other than Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice is a beautiful action-adventure, story-rich game set in a dark fantasy world with Norse mythology lore to it. In this game, you get to play as Senua, a picked warrior who has to travel to Helheim in order to rescue the soul of her significant other from the goddess. Now, throughout the journey, there are various puzzles to solve in which you really gotta pay attention to every bit and piece of the specific puzzles in order to solve, as you really have to hone in at every hair of the grass, as well as pay attention and look carefully at the surroundings, maybe turn the angle and whatnot. You have to do all that in order to solve various puzzles, because some of the puzzles can be a bit tricky if you are not good at paying attention to the surroundings, and the puzzles oftentimes involve of matching specific symbols that are found throughout the game to open a specific gate, as well as, fixing those different bridges in order to progress in the game. As well as talking about the action side of things, there are plenty of enemies to fight in which they can come unexpectedly in an area in which you are about to solve a specific puzzle. They can come unexpectedly, in which it is really fun and really awesome, really submersive as I engage in those various combat scenarios in melee fashion. But what I am really the most impressed with Ninja Theory with creating Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice is them really taking the effort to raise awareness of the struggle of psychosis. Because as far as Senua, the main character that you play as, as you go about and assist her on her journey, you will be able to experience what it's like to be someone who has psychosis, and where you will be able to experience a voice narrator who basically throughout the game will speaking in those voices that sound like hallucinations as you go about, whether it is fighting those different enemies, whether it is solving various puzzles, or even just roaming around and continuing on with the story. It just really feels so submersive, and I'm really thankful that Ninja Theory took the time to go above and beyond to not just, imitate other games that have characters with disabled characters, but they also go above and beyond to do the research to make Hellblade to depict psychosis as accurate as possible. So that is something that's just really cool, and is a really, really great action-adventure masterpiece in my opinion. And as somebody who has autism and somebody who has a high respect for the special needs population, this game is just something in which I cannot ignore. It is just so awesome and so touching to me. So yeah, if all that sounds interesting to you, if you love action-adventure games where there is a deep lore to it, as well as there are plenty of enemies to fight, as well as you love these games that depict disabled characters to its finest, definitely check out Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice on the Steam Deck. Alright friends, these are 20 action-adventure games in which I'll recommend any Steam Deck owner to check out. Let me know in the comment section below, are there any action-adventure games you will recommend me to check out in which I did not mention on the list? And if you love this type of videos, I have also plenty of other list videos on this channel sharing a glimpse of various games, so feel free to check that out as well. And as always, if you love gaming discussions, gaming reviews, gaming lists, and everything related to Steam Deck, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe so you not miss another video. I try to post Mondays and Fridays around 6 p.m. Pacific time, so stay tuned. Once again, my name is Joey from the Nomadic Gaming Guild, and game on!